Once again, Simchat Purim, and welcome to this fifth and last pre-Purim video focusing on segments of the Megillat Esther, the Megillah, the book of Esther. If you were to read the entire book of Esther, it's not very long, I think you would agree with me that one of the central themes throughout the entire book is irony. Irony. Think about these illustrations. At the very beginning, we learn about Vashti. Vashti was banished from the palace, but she was replaced by a woman who emerges as even more powerful than Vashti. Vashti was banished as a way of denigrating her and all of the women, and yet in her stead, Persia elevates a woman who eventually becomes as powerful an individual as can be imagined. Vashti was disrespected both as a woman and as a monarch. Esther, who succeeds her, is well respected, we see, in both categories. There is no attempt to put her on display once she ascends to the throne. And while Vashti is banished at the beginning, the ultimate banishment in the story is that of Haman, not only banished from the palace, but banished from life. So that's one irony. Other ironies. Haman wants Mordechai to bow down. Mordechai refuses to do so, and so Haman offers to kill all of the Jews, not just Mordechai. He wants Mordechai dead, and he wants the entire Jewish people dead. What ultimately happens? Haman is hanged, and Mordechai, the one who is the object of Haman's wrath, Mordechai succeeds Haman as the second most powerful person. So the irony there is Haman seeks the death of Mordechai, and it is Haman who ultimately hangs on the gallows that were prepared for Mordechai. And Haman ascends to this powerful position. In the end, with his demise, it is Mordechai who ascends to that very same position. So another irony. Continuing this further, Haman, as we said, is not only seeks to kill Mordechai, but the entire Jewish people. What happens? It is not only Haman hanged, but, and again, put aside for the time being our feelings and our sentiments about murder and about self-defense, and just try to understand the story in the context of a Jewish community fighting for survival. Haman plots to exterminate the Jews. Who ends up getting killed? Not only Haman, but Haman's sons by the hand of Jews. Haman wants to kill Jews. The Jews end up being responsible not only for Haman's death, but for the death of his murderous children. But the ultimate irony in this story concerns the greater Jewish people of Persia, the entire population of Jews within Persia. We assume that they are all afraid for their lives, and we learned about the fact that they fasted and they put on sackcloth. They are afraid for their lives. And this certainly and sadly echoes, is a portent of things to come in the future. The Crusades, the Ukrainian massacre led by Khmelnytsky, the pogroms and the subjugation of Jews in the USSR, the Nazis, Jews living in Arab lands. But what do we have in this story? We have the irony of a Jewish community which it fears for its collective lives, but in the end, the Jews conquer the rest of the nation. Those who, I wouldn't say the rest of the nation, the Jews conquer all those who attempt to attack them. So in the end, the Jews are not the ones who are afraid. Jews are the ones who are being assertive. And I want to just share with you a couple of verses as a background. Even though Haman dies, once a decree is established and promulgated, it cannot be invalidated. So the decree to exterminate the Jews on this date now known as Purim, was still in effect. But as a response, out of concern for that, Mordechai and Esther made it clear to the king. And then what does the king do? The king writes a second decree. And this is in chapter 8, verse 11. The king has permitted the Jews of every city to assemble and fight for their lives. If any people or province attacks them, now the language again is quite harsh, but when we see how this is an ironic reversal of what was going to be the fate of the Jews and what became the fate of Jews in subsequent eras. They may, meaning the Jews may destroy, massacre, and exterminate armed forces and anybody else that gets in their way. So the irony is that the Jews who were at first passive and who are the potential victims of extermination become the aggressors, enabled by this second decree to defend themselves, and they rise to power. One of the few times in our history where Jews as victims, the story was reversed, turned on its head, and the Jews are not the victims, but the Jews are the assertive ones. That, I think, is the ultimate irony. And the best and the most fitting expression of this, to me, delicious, ironic turn of events comes at the very end of chapter 8. And in every province, every city, when the king's commanded decree arrived, there was gladness and joy among the Jews, a feast and a holiday. The Jewish people celebrated their freedom. But then, listen to this, and many of the people of the land, not referring to the Jewish community here, but the rest of the kingdom, of the palace, and the kingdom, and many of the people of the land professed to be Jews, mit Yahadim, for the fear of the Jews had fallen upon them. Now I ask you, is that not the ultimate irony? That Jews who were afraid, Jews who were the symbol of derision and disgrace, are now so powerful that everybody wants to identify as a Jew. Think again, because there's so many associations here with the Holocaust. Think about the Jewish star that was forced upon Jews as a badge of shame. And think about how many Jews were forced into hiding and how many had to live a secret life. And again, not just then, the Inquisition, which I didn't mention before among all the other episodes, excuse me, the Inquisition was a time where Jews also had to live in secrecy. But certainly during the Holocaust, Jews had to hide out, or if they were in public at all, they had to submerge their faith. They could not reveal themselves as Jews, for if they revealed themselves as Jews, they would have been killed immediately. And now look at this story. Not only was that not the case, but everyone was so afraid of the Jewish community. They all wanted to identify as Jews. Again, I think it's a delicious irony, a reversal of much of history. And I'll just conclude by saying I think part of the character of the state of Israel and one of the expressions of pride is an Israeli army, which is not afraid to stand up and defend a nation, defend the Jewish community. The army, for all of the international criticism, has certainly achieved great respect, accomplished a tremendous amount both within Israel and the Jewish community as a source of pride. Again, the Jews standing up, defending themselves independently. So I associate the phenomenon of a modern state of Israel and an independent Jewish army with this story of Purim. Jews defending themselves to the extent that people were so in awe that they wanted to identify themselves as Jews. I hope you found some meaning in these various observations. Take a look at the story, come to your own interpretation and conclusions.